Levi Hildebrand, thank you for joining the Hey Neighbor podcast. I really appreciate having you on here. How's it going?
It's going great, Graham. Let's talk about neighbors.
I think on your channel, you've been talking a lot about how you all just bought a house,
Yep.
and then a bit about like neighborhood building. You've had a couple installments of that. That's what I'm all about. So, but before we get into like the neighborhood building, I think what's really interesting for a lot of people because you sort of did you have the kid first and then you bought the house or yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think that's a very common story for people, right? Like everyone's like I'm gonna be in this cool city or whatever life for a while, and then you buy a house and you're like, oh, maybe more land is a good idea and schools and stuff. So curious, like how you chose your house. It's got cool beams. What made you all make the choice for where you want to
But
live?
yeah, it's true. Look, you can see the cool house beams right there.
I like it.
We were actually, I guess our community building story begins with the purchasing of the house. But I will back up just a little bit further because the decision to make the house came from the decision to live in an apartment in the city. So
Mm.
Leah and I lived in a condo in Victoria, BC, which is a very progressive liberal um, city with a couple of universities, a lot of student population. The city itself is famously called city of the newlyweds and the nearly deads because that is the demographics that typically go there. It's people who are in university or young professionals, or they're people who are retiring. And we didn't really understand how true that was until we brought our a year and a half old baby there. And we were living in a condo down the street from what is a notoriously famous sort of unhoused population in Canada. And we were in the middle of the downtown core. Like we were as downtown as you can get. And that really kind of put us into an odd position because we were kind of having to square our old life where we just like were young, had friends, partied and lived in a condo downtown to like now we were up at 5 a.m. every single morning with a toddler trying to like figure out how to make our life work in this new environment. And so we lived in the apartment for 9 months. We managed that, but about the 6 month mark, we were like, okay, we want to be able to like host my parent. Like my parents don't live in that city, so it was like we want to be able to have my parents come over to our house. We want to be able to host people in our space. We want to have room for our child. We kind of can't do those things in this space. So we looked at houses in the city, and it was like millions of dollars. And so we did the thing that everybody does. We moved out to a more affordable city, and specifically we moved to one that has more that has Leah's family in it. So we it was kind of a no brainer, and yeah, the process of buying a house, man, it really just it changes your whole outlook on like people, neighborhoods, and life itself. It's been genuinely kind of insane for me.
Yeah, we sort of we did a slower thing where we um bought a house like near the downtown core, and we're like, this is so cool, we're gonna still be able to go out to restaurants and all this stuff. And then after like the third time our kid picked up a cigarette butt and shoved it in his mouth, we're like, okay, maybe like a park is a good idea.
Yeah,
Very
can we go
quickly it
somewhere
changes
that's
your idea.
slightly less geographically local?
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. That's so funny. So so you moved out. It's funny living near in-laws' parents. Exact same thing. I think so many people do that. It's like I meet so many people that are like, "We're going to live here," and I'm like, "No, you're not. You're going to live where your wife's parents live." And I'm sorry to tell you, but that's just how it's going to
That's
end
how
up
it.
for you.
Yeah, it is.
So did you like? I know you've like a very like conscious. I would say let's distill your entire ecosystem content down to one word, and I'll call it conscience. So did
Yeah.
you like how much conscious forethought did you put into not just like live near her parents, but like the neighborhood and like things like sidewalks and school zones and all that kind of stuff? How much of that weighed into your decision of what where to buy or where to buy?
A ton, a ton. We actually canvassed on the streets, going door to door with little pamphlets with our information on it, with our names and who we were and what we were looking for. And we knocked on maybe like 100 doors and handed out all these leaflets because we didn't want to live in just any house. We wanted something that had substance, that was in an area that was like not generic and like monocultural. Like we really specifically wanted to live somewhere that had some soul. And in the town that we ended up moving to, it's kind of just a giant suburb. Which there isn't anything wrong with suburbs, but it does create a lot of homogeneous sort of housing types, and it does kind of encourage a certain um, like mentally dumbed down kind of village behavior. Like I think the suburbs does sort of kill the idea that you exist in a community, and so we moved
Certainly
to an
doesn't foster
area.
it, right? Like it's
No,
yeah, yeah.
do you find that where you are as well? Like I know I'm generalizing here maybe, but like that is sort of what I feel.
I think people want I think people want it, they don't know how, and I think the way that our neighborhoods are constructed, they're all meant to be little castles, right? Like that whole idea that like a lawn, was like a what do you call it? A flex early on,
Right.
right? You
Yeah,
had a
yeah,
lawn to
yeah,
show that you didn't need to grow food, right?
yeah,
And so everyone's
totally.
got their own little lawn, and like you've got a sort of virtual bridge you need to cross the little walkway to get up to the front door. So I do think there is some truth to that. But I still think that everybody who lives there wants that. That's why you buy in a suburb, is to be more sort of like safe and cozy. But I think we've taken that to the extreme of like that means safe from each other, when in fact it just means safe from like your kids picking up and eating cigarette butts.
Yeah, and I think it's safe from the uncomfortable human reality of life. Like we humans are always in this weird conflict, I think, where like we want to be completely by ourselves. We don't want to have to talk to anyone, we don't have to see anyone, we don't have to interact with another human being ever at all. But then also we want to be close to community spaces. We want to have friends. We want to like bump into each other on the street and like have nice organic connections. So like there's always that like tug of war that goes on. And I've seen like Instagram posts that say something along the lines of like, there's the more wealthy a country gets, the more isolated the people become. And it's because you can kind of afford to separate yourself from people. Like that is what you do when you have a lot of money, is like, okay, well, I'm just going to buy my own house then. And I'm going to move to my own little neighborhood. And if you have more money, then you just make the walls and higher and the space in between wider apart as well. Like it's like we have, and then inadvertently you get sadder. And so we canvassed in areas that we could afford in. Like that was obviously like a component of it, given that we live in a very overpriced locale. But where we kind of ended up is like I would say middle class, like almost on the lower end of middle class neighborhood. Like there's affordable housing and subsidized housing down the street. We live near a city park where there is homelessness and people having hard times. There's an indigenous resource center up the road that deals with unhoused people. But where we are is like a little enclave of slightly more affluent homes, kind of in this little mini bubble. And a lot of people come to this neighborhood and they go, oh, there's kind of like a lot of, I don't know, I'd rather go to like the safe part of the suburbs. It's like a 25-minute drive that way. And why we liked this neighborhood is that proximity to that variety of people kind of makes you have to interact and socialize in a different way. Like if you're all the same and you're all in your own little individual, usually middle class, upper middle class neighborhood, there's no reason to talk to your neighbor. There's no impetus to have a connection with somebody else because you all have your own lawnmower, you all have your own weed whacker, you have your two cars parked in front of your two-car garage, and if at all possible, you don't interact with your neighbors. Whereas here, like, there's a culture of people just walking by and saying hello, and
That's
I don't
awesome.
know what that is. I don't know what we lucked into a neighborhood that was kind of like more receptive to that, and then we're the kind of people that are total, we're just yes. It's like the kid walks by with his mom and comes up and starts playing with our cones. We have cones that we put out on the road when we're playing with our little kid, and he starts playing with the cones, and we go out onto the deck and we start chirping at him. Oh, hey, what are you doing? Those are our cones. Hey. And the mom's like, oh, hi, who are you? You know, we will
Yeah.
always engage. We are
Yeah.
always the ones to make sure that that connection gets made. And it's just been instantaneous. We've been here for 6 months. We know more people on this block than people who've lived here for 6 years,
Nice.
because that's who
Yeah. I
we
think
are, you know?
that, um, I wonder, did your canvassing, were there any interactions that you had while canvassing that you then got to say like, we made it, we're here? You know, have you had some of those interactions?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the house that we almost bought right before this was like almost like a rom-com. It was like a weird, like Hollywoody kind of moment. Like we knocked on the door and met the woman, and we said, "Hey, we're here because your neighbor Rob said that we should come and talk to you." And she was like, "Oh, Rob said come over," and we're like, "Yeah, he said that you might be interested in selling your house." And she was like, "Okay, sure." And she like invites us into her house. It's this beautiful home, you know. She's widowed. She's looking to move. She's loved this home her whole life. She's put in a bunch of upgrades, and her neighbor Rob is the mayor of the neighborhood. He's like the guy. He knows everybody. He owns multiple houses on the street. He's very involved, very connected, and he's looking to bring a young family into his neighborhood. We're his perfect demographic. He's like,
Yeah.
yeah, a
Yeah.
young professional couple with a kid. That's who I want
Yeah.
as my neighbor.
Yeah.
And it was going so well. It was like such a nice interaction. She really felt like a person who was going to not just sell us a house, but who's like going to work with us to bequeath a home, you know. And
Yeah.
we were sort of working on price, and then basically she wasn't ready to move. The problem was
Mm.
that she was, you know, in the process of grieving, and she was clearing out her basement, and there was like all this stuff in her house, and it was like, okay, we need to move. Like we're not like,
Yeah.
we want to
Yeah.
move into the right house, but like we're also not going to wait for you to like mourn your husband and
Yeah.
then like clear your stuff out. So this place came up. We went through our realtor and we bought it the normal way that you do, and it just turned out to be a better house. It was in a better neighborhood. It kind of just worked for what we needed. And I think that, you know, whether it would have worked out with her or not, that canvassing, I think, really puts people into a different mindset. Like I think the way that you build community first and foremost is by like picking a community. And I think a lot of people go with a realtor, and the realtor and the experience of having a realtor is like, okay, what's the number of outside of the, you know, on the price tag, you know, first and foremost, what's
Yeah.
that number say? And
And how do I
then,
get
you
them to
know,
push that number higher so I can make more money? Yeah.
exactly, yeah, yeah. And like what's the percentage that I'm going to pay on that, and what's the, you know, property taxes for this area, and like it's all numerical, it's all mathematical. It removes the community aspect, which I think is so weird. It's all about, okay, you know, what are you going to get in value from a numerical level if you come to this area? Are you gonna, and you know, it's not, does this community have what you want? It's, is this a good community that you can resell in? Like that was always the conversation with the realtor. It was like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you know, if you, when you sell, like the assumption is that you're going to sell this house and you're going to make a bunch of money on it. Like that's how
Yeah. Yeah.
every realtor interacts with a house. And we were like, no, we're buying a house because we're going to live there for 20 years. Like, the ROI is not really our primary objective here. Our intention is to buy a home where we can raise our children, and like they can have freedom and autonomy to walk to school, to walk to a playground, to go to a rec center, to have friends in their nearby area. Like, and that's, I don't think we think about that enough. I think housing's been financialized to a point where we forget that there's like community associated with where we live.
Yeah. No, I think it's funny the similarities, because we I learned a long time ago that door knocking is the best way to get a house. And so we live in this part of California where there are all these mid-century modern homes. And so I just went on Google Maps, looked for the mid-century modern home roof type, drove to that neighborhood. It was like mid-century home plus trees. And so I would drive to that neighborhood and I just got out and knocked on every door and was like, "Will you sell me your house? Will you sell me your house?" And like people would invite me in. People gave me phone numbers of other people that were selling. And then
Yeah.
somebody was like, "You should really go look at this house across the street. It's not mid-century, but it's really cool. It's been on the market for way too long. I think people don't get past the first few pictures." And I was like, "Okay." And so I went over here and we found our house and now we have this great community. So I think it's very
That's the house
I
you
don't
bought was
what
the one that people
the one
told
that
you
was
to go
recommended to
see?
me. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, dude,
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like
that's awesome.
the interior was awful. It was like buttercream yellow, and there was siding and all 20 different kinds of carpet, and it smelled like cats. But it's on half an acre. There's a creek, and then there's like a bridge over the creek to more land. And I was like, okay, well, you'll never buy that again. And it was all overgrown. Like I was, like a jungle back there, like a tick a disaster, but you just can't find that, and nobody made it past the first few pictures. So we were really lucky, but it was only because I knocked on the door and because the person who talked to me knew this house because they'd been here before, and they're like, "It's really great. You should go look at it." So, what drove you to do the door knocking? Like that's not a common thing to just be like, "I'm going to go knock on doors and ask people to sell me their house." Like people think I'm weird for doing that, so it's nice
I
to
think
be
that
validated.
yeah, we're validating each other, Graham, by just getting
Thank
on
you.
this call. Let's be honest.
This is great.
I I wanted to door knock because one, I think that realtors don't have much in the way of value add anymore. I think in the early days when, like houses for sale were just things you would see like in a newspaper or like a leaflet or something. Like
Yeah.
maybe back then it was important to know a realtor. Today, it's like you can go on the internet, you can look up a house for sale, and you can call the realtor that's listing the house. You don't need to have a realtor to do that. My parents have bought and sold multiple houses by themselves. So I had seen from my parents that the process of buying a house did not need to be formalized through a realtor. Um, but then I also wanted to get on the ground and see what was going on in the neighborhoods that we thought were going to be good. Because you Google searched those houses that aesthetically sort of fit into the mold that you were interested in. And then you went there and you started meeting people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the interactions that you had with those people in those houses is going to tell you a hell of a lot more about where you may live than anything on Google or anything your realtor is going to tell you. Because we showed up in certain neighborhoods and we canvassed and got nowhere. People were very, very cold at the door. They were not very interested in talking to you. They did not understand what we were trying to do. And then we would go into other neighborhoods, doors would open. People would chat. They'd invite you in. And that immediately, as soon as you start to understand that people's response to canvassing is like maybe one of the best indicators of whether or not that community is willing to accept you. I mean, that's massive. Like if you went to the Hollywood Hills and you started walking around knocking on doors, it would just never work. And I don't want to live there.
Yeah.
That's not where I want to live. I
It's so
think
funny.
that people ignore that.
You mentioned the Hollywood Hills, and it's so funny because like I, like anyone else, find myself sometimes late at night looking at beachfront property, right? I'm like, when everything goes great, like this is gonna be it. And then I think to myself, like, well, if I go and knocked on all those doors and was like, hey, I'm throwing a block party, 90% of those people, the houses will be empty because nobody will be there. And the
Yeah.
ones that are there are either Airbnb guests or they're like
Yeah.
famous and have no interest in walking up the street and saying hello. And I'm like, God, that would actually be really like desperately lonely to live in a place like that because nobody would connect with you. Nobody would want to. I mean, maybe not. I don't want to be anti-elitist in that way. There may be some very wonderful people that want to hang out, but
Yeah, maybe.
it's I find now that I live in this neighborhood where like I have such deep connection with everybody that my my Zillow surfing is cut short because very quickly I'm like, well, I can't replace my neighborhood, right? And like I've spent 6 years building this community here, and like I'm never gonna. I mean, I could go do that again if I had to, but I don't like. I don't want to. I have we have
Well,
11
that's
plus
value
events a
you've
year.
created,
Right.
you know.
That's not reflective on the Zillow price, right?
Exactly.
The Zestimate doesn't take into account the summer games that I host every year that are like I've seen these kids go from like 5 years old to 10, and the games have gotten really intense. So like that
Yeah.
is not reflected in the Zillow price at all. So yeah, that's
And
really
that's the
yeah.
realtor experience. That's the financialization of our homes that has destroyed that community identity. Because back when my parents were buying houses, they were like, okay, well, like, can I afford it? Firstly, but like also there isn't a bidding war. There's no like, I'm gonna, redecorate the whole yard to try and fetch another 15, $20,000 on the list price. Like that wasn't really kind of what we're fighting against now. It was mostly about vibes. And I
Yeah.
think that we underestimate the power of vibes because we came in here and the first thing that happened, we pulled up and we do the tour with the realtor and we come out onto the street and there's this guy standing there. And I'm like, oh, hey, howdy. Because I always do. I see a person, I go, hey, how's it going? And he says, oh, yeah, I'm the neighbor over here. You taking a look at the house? I'm like, yeah, yeah. He's like, oh, well, I know Alex, the owner. If you ever need any information about the neighborhood or you want to just talk about what's going on here, you just let me know. And I was like,
You're in.
that's who I was looking for. And he
Yeah.
gave me the phone number of the lady who sold us the house. He gave me his number and I was able to communicate with him. And when we bought the house and showed up on the day that we were supposed to take occupancy, he'd organized a welcoming party.
No way.
He went and found all the neighbors around here and he said, hey, new families moving into the neighborhood. Let's show up and show them a good welcome. They gave us vegetables they grew in their backyard, a piece of art that one of them had made. They're all hugging us and saying hello. They helped us move stuff into the house. It was
Oh my
like,
God.
you know, you don't get that unless you're kind of willing to probe a little bit. And
Totally.
from him, we've now connected with all the neighbors up and down the street to a certain degree, and you can and immediately you can kind of tell who's willing to say hi and who's not. Like there's some neighbors who they live right there. I can see their house. We've never spoken to them because they never come outside.
Yeah, and that's okay, right? People are
Yeah.
allowed to have their own feelings, but man, what an incredibly lucky. I mean, I guess not so lucky, right? You put in the effort to sort of determine the vibe. Instead of like real estate agents, we need to be like real estate vibe people. I think we've just started a thing, right? But that what an incredible welcome to get stuff brought to you. Um,
Yeah.
I guess like so so you got welcomed into this like feeling of a neighborhood, and you've got a mayor already, but it sounds
Mhm.
like you want to sort of take the next step and
Yeah, this is why I
assert
wanted
your
to talk
own
to you.
candidacy for mayor, right? So yeah, what is
Oh, I just want to be on council. Like I
okay,
don't,
okay, yeah,
like he can have the main title. I just want to be a supporting character.
yeah. Well, what's the sort of vision for you, right? Like it's five
Oh
years from
man.
now. This is yeah. What does your neighborhood look like in your ideal world?
Oh, so I'm building a little library for sure.
Nice. That's a great start.
Because yeah, that's been on my list for a minute because we lived in the city. We lived in a neighborhood that's famous, has like the most little libraries per capita or something in all of Canada or something. It's like crazy. They're all over the place. They're all very artistic and very interesting looking. And there's one up the street, but there's no other little libraries in our area. And I'm like,
Mm,
here we go. I get to be the little library guy.
that's
So we're gonna
awesome.
do that. The street that we live on is a pedestrian thoroughfare. It's a designated bike lane with the city. So we have a lot of foot traffic that goes by. So we're gonna have the little library out there at the end of our road, and it's gonna be a little library on the top, and it's gonna be a free veggie section on the bottom because we've got a whole bunch of fruit trees in the backyard. So in the summer, when you've got like, 100 pears, you can just put out a batch of pears and let the neighborhood sort of just take them as they would like to. Um, and I think that the something I would love to do, and I just know that all of this is work, and I want I need somebody like the mayor to help me do these things. Is I want to create a neighborhood association, something that allows us to advocate as an entity within the municipality that we're in, to host a block party, to maybe mandate some pedestrian infrastructure near the bridge down the road or up near the busy road where people commute. Like, I think that the next step beyond just like knowing your neighbor is like organizing with your neighbors. And that's something that I have never lived in a place long enough to do. Like, you've gone from living in my parents' house to living in a college environment to living with my wife in a condo. There was never any opportunity to really like galvanize the community in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know that like maybe starting the neighborhood association isn't like step one, you know.
Yeah.
But that's like the long-term vision is like at some point I'm involved with our community in that way. We have like a group that can get some things done, which would be really neat.
That's cool. There's, I think, at least for my vision of how the neighborhood stuff like this works, I actually sort of think of there being like a blood-brain barrier between neighborhood and activity, because there's the most, I think like the most core and like radical thing that you can do is just like knock on people's doors and say to them like, hey, I want to be your friend because you live within this radius. Like there's something incredibly powerful when you I say to people like draw a circle around the 200 closest houses to you, and like that's your neighborhood. And then when you go knock on their door and you're like, hey, I drew this circle and you're inside of it and now you're part of this group and it's called this. Do you want to come to a party? People are like, oh my God, yay. Like we're so desperate to be part of any kind of group that when you name, like draw a boundary and name a group, there's a part of your brain that's like, oh, thank God, finally I'm part of this like tribe. And I think that's worth doing in and of itself, just because it's for the loneliness, for the community, for just like when we walk down the street and I know every person behind every door that I see, and I think I bet I sleep better at night because I know that,
100%.
But I think there is something powerful. Like since we've done that, we've got a neighbor who lives on the street that gets really busy, and our city is really big. It's really hard to advocate for stuff. And so we're actually just planning on like building a median. We're just not going to ask permission. And we're just going to like, where this street where everyone goes too fast, we're just going to put up like planters in the middle of the road. And so it's going to force people to slow down. But it's the same idea. But I think that the twain shan't meet, or they don't have to meet really. Like, I think it's almost two separate jobs. One is the community for community's sake. And then the other one is, okay, there's 200 of us. That's a voting block in a small local election that matters. So how can we leverage this power to get the kind of things that we want? I think one's an outgrowth of the other, I guess, is sort of what I'm saying. But I think it's really cool.
How do you organize these people? This is something I'm trying to figure out. Like, you've got 80-year-old neighbors on one side, and Gen Z up the street. How, like, email is too fragmented, Discord is way too modern. Like, are we all on Facebook groups and Facebook Messenger? Like, is that the great divide? Like, Facebook's not good for shit, but at least we can get a good group chat going. Like, is that it?
That is a dirty secret of my life, is that my neighborhood is run on a Facebook group. And so I do,
Yeah.
it shames me to say it, but I think that's, it's got all the tools you need, which is really great. When people are going to post stuff on Facebook Marketplace, they tend to post it in the neighborhood group first. And they're like, you have 24 hours to claim this stuff, because it's already there, right? So I do think that's a great way to do it. One thing that's really cool about this is like, we've got this neighbor, Tom, who I made a video with where he was like, pretended like he hates me. And now he's like, if you're recording, I'm only going to say that I hate you. But he's like in his mid to late 60s. His kids are grown. And then we have a southern neighbor, Casey, who's like early 30s. She's got a 4-year-old. And her 4-year-old is like, can we go for a play date with Colby, who's Tom's dog? And so they go to Tom's house and play. And Tom gets out the Legos. Casey and Tom hang out because her husband's a firefighter, so she's gone all the time. And then, so the 4-year-old and the dog play, and the mid 60s guy and the young 30s woman sit and visit and they're best friends. They're like, he takes her to the airport. They hang out all the time.
Wow.
So the platform is less important than the fact that like all these people do connect, and people are always like, how do I get the older people in the neighborhood connected? I'm like, they're people too. And they also want to, they're, what you perceive as grumpiness is actually just loneliness and having been made to feel invisible by society. And the second you make people not feel invisible and recognize them as people again, it's incredible how they open up. But Facebook or WhatsApp are really great platforms for making that happen.
Dude, Meta, bringing people together.
We've just been using it wrong this whole time. We've been doing it the wrong way.
This is truly what social media is supposed to be.
It's the social media is different from social networks. And so it was originally called the social network, and then it became social media, but you can actually still, it's very subversive to use Facebook for a social network, actually, in a fun way.
I agree. And also like, I don't know how they did it before the internet, but there was just like a sort of osmosis like effect that happened when like so-and-so up the road was like, hey, I'm smelling a lot of smoke. Like, is there somebody's house on fire? Like, what's going on? And somehow, like, they would just call Susie over on whatever, and they would somehow connect, like, we don't do that now. So we need to find new ways of connecting with the people who are like immediately around us. But it is something that requires real advocacy. And I think that, I'm not like, I'm the hero of this story, but like somebody needs to be willing to like start the Facebook group. Somebody needs to be willing to go door to door and like, get the ball rolling. And I think that diversity is so key for this because, there's nothing more catalyzing for a older person as seeing a young family who doesn't know how to prune their fig tree. Like
totally.
That's going to get the old person out of the house and go, hey, I was thinking about your fig tree. I use this example because it happened to me yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, exactly. Brian down the street's like, hey, you really should start pruning your fig tree here pretty soon. I'm like, oh, okay. Thanks, Brian. That's really good information.
Brian. I genuinely didn't know. And I really,
Exactly. And, if everyone is all kind of in the same boat, and I'm writing an outline for a video that my wife and I are going to record about friendship in your 30s. And I think the people in their 30s are the hardest people to be friends with because they're too busy. There's too much going on. They got their kids, they got their jobs, they've got their personal lives. Family, their parents are getting old, so they're taking care of them. Their kids are young, so they're taking care of them. Like where I'm at right now is full on. Like I've got this much space left for like a hobby that I don't like. I don't have the space. And so who my friends are becoming is the people who have a lot of time, which is old people. Like I interact more with my neighbor Dale than I interact with my friends. I don't see my friends at all because they're also busy at work, but Dale works from home and all of his kids are grown up and they're gone away. So I see Dale like twice a day, and it's this weird sort of situation where we don't imagine our community as what it actually is. Like I think we have this odd sort of exclusionary idea that like, well, I need friends and the friends need to look like me. They need to be my age. They need to be of my income bracket and they need to do the things that I already do. And what community forces you to realize is that it's actually just whoever's nearby.
Yeah.
like it's not that. It's not
really not hard.
It's not a hype house in LA. You're not creating an influencer mansion where you all have the same haircut and talk about the same designer brands you all like. No, it's it's not sexy like that. It's not Hollywood. It is just who you happen to be near. And that is really cool. Like that is like, there's fascinating people on our street. Like just up the road, they're like, we've lived here for 6 months, and they're like, oh, I got to go to work. I'm like, what do you do for work? He's like, I own and run a health food store. I'm like,
Super cool.
okay, random. That's so,
Yeah.
what, how did you get into that? He's like, oh, well, my great grandfather started it. I'm like,
How cool.
like, yeah, like,
Also, like now you have a deep access to all of the best local Pacific Northwest
exactly.
produce. Like if I don't get
Yeah,
overnighted some smoked salmon, I'm going to be so mad after
that's what I'm
this.
saying. Like, I haven't even got mine yet. Come on,
Yeah.
Logan, come through. No,
And
but
so,
that's
it's funny you said about like, I think it's something that is kind of, I was like, oh, this is so revolutionary that like being friends with your neighbors is such a cool thing. But it's like, not really. In
no,
elementary school, you're just friends with the kids that you live near. In middle school and high school, they're just the kids that you happen to sit next to. In
yeah,
college, it's the people on your level in your dorm. Like, we're not we're not all as like intentional as we think about how we make friends. And I think there is something that like when you get into your 30s, when you move to the burbs because you have kids, and you drop the ego around that you should be hanging out
yeah,
with other hype house cool people. All of a sudden you're like, I'm not that cool, and B, well, maybe I am, but like my neighbors are also really cool and they have all their own cool stuff that they do.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so funny to the connections that you make. We did a roving cocktail night, so different houses had different cocktails, and so you would go to
yeah,
all of them all night. And
yeah.
like my neighbor Dave is the coolest guy on the street. He's got a Corvette. He's got like these really cool dirt bikes, and he does these like cross country Dakar style motorbike races. 10 times
Wow.
cooler than me. Like I
Yeah,
would I
yeah.
could dream to be as cool as Dave. That I am
And you
not.
get to
And
be
so
friends with him because you're his
yeah,
neighbor.
because I'm his neighbor. Yeah. And like the guys helping each other with how to do stuff is such an interesting thing too. Like how do you I'm a big advocate for like tool libraries. They don't need to be physical and like having all the tools in one place, but whoever like Brian, if Brian can go around and take notes of all the tools everybody has in the neighborhood and builds a sort of Google sheet of the tools, and then you can just go to Brian and be like, Brian, I need a thing. And he'd be like, oh, yeah, Dave's got it. And we've got to make sure to do this stuff when it's back. And then Brian will love that, right? That he gets to be the tool keeper. And it's so funny how by choosing to embrace that neighborhood and then draw a circle around it, give it a name, and then when the sort of most powerful thing is most people will start hanging out and then they don't know what to do next. The next powerful thing is to start giving ownership and giving roles
To
in the
other
neighborhood
people.
to other
Totally.
people, and then they get to
Yeah.
choose, because mayor isn't the only role that makes the city run, right?
No.
There's all kinds of other stuff, and so when it snows where you are, you're going to have the snow person, and
Yeah.
you guys can be the kids people or whatever it is. So yeah, that next stage of roles is so important and so cool. I think
And
uh yeah.
how strong is that? Like I think there's this really weird um thing that like, is going on right now because the world's coming to an end, right? I don't know if you know
Yeah,
about this,
every
but
day.
yeah, the world is coming to an end, and everybody goes, "Oh my God, the world's coming to an end. I need to build a bunker." And it's like, no, you need to know your neighborhoods so that you don't have to build a bunker to hide from them.
Right.
Like, like if
Right.
you know everyone up and down your street, you can be pretty confident that it's not going to be one of them that robs your house, and you
Yeah, then
know
all you
that
need is a roadblock.
exactly. Like, yeah, you need a roadblock, or maybe you just need to have a coalition of those people looking out for
Yeah,
each other. Like,
totally.
it's not. We always think in this very individualistic way about our problems, and that is cultural. That's been ingrained in us for generations, and it's very difficult. Like, I don't know what you see on your comments, but whenever I post about creating a community, people are like, why don't you just mind your own business? And I'm like, wow, it's like this person must seriously have zero social interaction in their life,
Yeah,
you know, because
that's
where
definitely
else
true.
does that mindset come from? Like, that's so so incredibly self-serving and then also self-damaging at the same time. Like to think that it's it's minding your own business is the ideal human state, is minding one's own business. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
And actually,
Yeah.
minding minding each other's business, while it can feel nosy sometimes, is actually great. Like knowing that your business is being minded is
Hmm.
actually like an incredible state of being. Like
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of times when like I'll get a text that it's like, "Hey idiot, your garage is open." And it's
No,
like, "Oh,
literally.
thanks."
Literally, my neighbor across the street, it was like 8 or 8:30 or something. He was like, "Hey, just letting you know your garage is open and your lights on." I was like, "All right, thanks." Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for the heads up. And our neighbor over here, this is a perfect example. This is what community really is that people don't want to accept. We have a neighbor right beside us here. Woman lives by herself, very lonely. She will say straight up, Jehovah Witnesses don't knock on my door because they don't have enough time. Like she's anyone shows up, she will just chat them up until it's dead, like beyond dead. And so we have this reality where there's this person who lives right beside us who is needy. You know, she needs social interaction. And we are basically the only community she has. I've never seen another person go into her house. It's
Yep.
just us. And
Yep.
so there's this trade off, though, because when we leave, I text Wendy, I'm like, hey, we're gone for 3 days. I know she's watching our house. Like, she knows everything that's going on our property 100% of the time that we're gone because she never leaves. And she picks up packages as soon as they arrive on the doorstep. She's monitoring the situation all times. She knows where our spare key is. But the trade off for that is we got to have like some mildly inconvenient conversations with her 3 to 4 times a week. You know, and that's fine. I will take that. It's a cheap price tag for the comfort and security of having her right there. You know.
Yeah. Well, and she's a as your kid gets older, that's you know who's going to want to talk a lot to anybody who will listen, your 4-year-old, and your 5-year-old. And you know who's going to listen? She's going to listen, and she's going to
That's
be like,
right.
"Oh yeah, tell me all about it." Like they'll connect. I
Yeah.
can't tell you how many times I've like told my kids to come home from a friend's house, and one comes home and I'm like, "Where's your brother?" And he's like, "I don't know." And then I go out on the street and he's stopped one of his many friends that's older that lives in the neighborhood, and they're talking. He's petting their dog. He's telling them about his day. They're telling him about their day.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, of course, they need that sort of connection. So
I
you're
think
just
kids really
priming.
put this in stark contrast too.
Yeah.
Because I think the individualist society is easy to understand as normal when you are an individual and you look out at the world and see other people as individuals. But as soon as you have a kid, you go, I is actually we? Like
Yeah.
that
Huh?
you're forced to recognize that like owning a house is not about buying an investment, it is about creating a stable environment for 20 years of your life or more to unfold undisturbed so that you can feel stable and secure in this incredibly challenging, super stressful experience that you're going through. It's joyful, yes, of course, but it is stressful. It is insane. And do you not want those neighbors to be your child's protective community? Like I want somebody to be like, "Hey, did you know that Frankie just went up the road with some guy?"
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you
Yeah.
don't know your neighbor, they're not going to text you that. If they don't have your phone number, they're not going to text you that. Like why don't we see it that way? Why don't we understand that knowing everybody around you is your protection in the case of something bad happening?
So
You
I,
know?
I think we do know that. And I think what's happened is that I sort of tell it this way, that you're actually the outlier. So, and I've heard from your videos that that Leah is actually the real reason why this is all happening, right? Like she's
She's
the
very
connector.
she's very good
But
at it.
what happens is everyone sits in their house, they look and they see the neighbors walk by, and they imagine in their mind like that person has a rich and full social life. And if I go up and talk to them, they're going to be like, what a loser. How dare you talk to me? I have all the friends in the world and I couldn't possibly make more room for you. Like, why you don't have anyone to talk to? How embarrassing, when in reality, they're just like desperate for someone to come and talk to them. So that's like why I'm doing what I'm doing, is to just be like, shake people and be like, actually, everyone feels this way. You need to go and be the Leah of the world and drag your Levi with you and go and knock on all your neighbors' doors and make a community, because everybody needs this. And so that's where I think there's people make this realization, but then they, just like everything, they put all these boundaries in front of themselves as to why it won't work, why people won't want to do it. They think, I can't tell you how many people have been like, well, what are they going to say when I knock on the door? Are they going to yell at me? And it's like, no, literally never are they going to yell at you. In fact, some of them are going to cry. They're going to be so grateful that you're doing it. So like, you just have to go out there and do it.
Yeah, I think that there's I don't want to get too tinfoil hat here, but like this is on purpose, like we live in a very isolated society because consumerism relies on us being isolated. Like you need to buy your own mower because you don't have a friend who has one, and it's socially uncomfortable for you to ask to borrow it. You have to own your multiple vehicles, and you have to own every single possible thing that you want, and you have to order Uber Eats and all of these things because you don't feel like you could share a meal with somebody else. You don't feel like you could share a ride to the airport with somebody else. There's so many layers of community that would service us in all the ways that these apps and these products claim to help us, you
Hmm.
know? Like,
I feel like
and then you go deeper, it's like, why don't we live in community anymore? Why don't we live with our families anymore? Like, why are we putting our kids in daycare when really, if we all lived in this dream world I'm imagining in my head, the grandparents all take care of the kids? Like the education is managed by the elders of the group, and the people like me are going to work and, create the whatever money that supports everything. Like, I know that's idealistic and maybe not how it would ever truly, there's people in big Indian households or something who are like, yeah, you know what? Living with your grandma's kind of annoying. you know?
well, I think like we had my in-laws live with us for like 3 months while they were building a new house. And
Yeah.
we were like a month and a half in, we were like, take the deposit away. This is so great. You should live with us. And they were like, no, thanks. It's nice to be here, but we like to sleep until 11. We don't like to be woken up at 7 a.m. by the kids being like, hey. But I think there is some, like there's new home builders around here that are building houses with in-law suites. And so
Yeah.
that is a thing. I think people are doing that. I think I'll push, it's my podcast, so I'm supposed to be nice and all this stuff, but I will push back on the it's by design, because I always go to like they wish they had that much control. You know what I mean? Like I think it's a confluence of incentives, right? Like you've got lawnmower companies are incentivized to sell the most lawnmowers, and so they push hard to do that sort of thing. And so I think I always try to find where I can take agency, and so that's why I think the like pushing people to do this stuff, if we change our behavior, then the market will adjust to how we want it to be, right? Like so yeah, I think that would only be my difference. But I do think that confluence of incentives have pushed us to this idea that we all need our own stuff. Like I want to repaint my kitchen cabinets, and I know I want to do a paint gun because I already painted them the wrong way and they look terrible, and that's why I want a paint gun now. And I was telling my neighbor about it, and he's like, I have a paint gun. And so that's when I was like, oh, library, like, we need I need to quit buying stuff and more like borrow things from the neighbors, because they don't use it all. So it's funny how that ends up happening. I love it's funny how you're it's funny how this sort of dawns on people. And so I'm so glad that you've been making videos to talk about your journey in inspiring people to go on this neighborhood transition, because it's the more people talking about it, the more people are going to get it, because that's why I'm doing this thing right now where I'm people have come to my program and they've turned their neighborhoods into communities. It's like the best thing ever. But I haven't done a good job documenting it. So now I'm doing a neighborhood makeover show where
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
so it's going to be great. So it's like I have 10 people across the country that are filming themselves as they turn their neighborhoods into communities. And so you're going to get to see the like each episode is lonely person, block party, and messiness in between. And it's going to be great to
Yeah.
like show that over and over again.
That's
You talked about like kids running around, like, 5 years you wanted to do this sort of activism stuff, but what about just like the neighborhood? Is your goal, how do you think, like, when your child gets to be 5, 6, 7, do you want them to have the sort of freedom to bike around the neighborhood? Is that something you're working towards?
6, 7. Yeah, the biking.
Cut.
We're a big bike family,
Okay.
so the biking is already kind of pretty ingrained in what we do, and I think the block party is a like a signifier, or like a canary coal mine metaphorical symbol of environmental health, in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
Like if you have a block
Like
party,
shopping
your
cart returns.
neighborhood's yeah, exactly. Like you're doing good. If there's a block party, it's like, okay, this community connects in some way that a lot of communities don't. It's
Totally.
I would say that there are levels, like front yard barbecues and Friday happy hour beers and stuff, which you've talked about. I think that's a tier to it. We're at that tier right now. That's where our
Okay.
neighborhood is at. And it's mostly facilitated by one household, which is the mayor. He's really kind of holding that up. We're pushing for a like Sunday play where we pull out the hockey nets and put them out on the street. I have like a bike ramp that I built for my 2-year old. So get the kids out on bikes, get the kids out there with the hockey sticks, and then just like, because we're on this sort of pedestrian pathway, people just like randomly walk by and start hanging out, and it just becomes this little hub right at the end of our driveway. And that requires a little bit of coordination. Like, you got to tell a few key people who have kids about the thing that's happening on Sunday. And then you actually have to be there on Sunday, and it can't be rainy. And, like, there's a few reasons why when it makes it a little harder than just kind of doing it. But that's, I think, the beginning. And then the block party, I think, is like, then you make it annual. If you can do one, that's great. If you can make it an annual thing, I think you're cooking. I think that's
Yeah.
the goal.
The annual rituals are like an incredible unlock for this whole thing, because we're very simple creatures. We love a good ritual, and we love a good standing ritual that we know that we do all the time. That's why like church worked so well for so many thousands of years. It
Yes,
was like on Sunday you do the thing. Um, so unsolicited thoughts about your Sunday thing to make it as successful
please.
as possible.
Yes.
Um, a sign. So putting a yard sign in that's like this Sunday neighborhood thing, this driveway, and then
Oh,
little like calls to action for people to do that. So like
a
why as
physical
people are
sign.
a physical sign, right? And like it
Damn.
is a big reminder to you to be like, damn it, I've committed to this thing, and then
Yeah.
it's also just people need to see stuff a bunch of times before they do it. And so you're going to get people that will never RSVP, never contact you, and then they'll show up and be like, well, I saw the sign. And because they were afraid to reach out, but they'll do that. So give people a way to connect with you ahead of time, because they'll text you and be like, what can we bring? So a sign with that's going to be great. Um,
I love that.
and just some inspiration. A friend of mine has been doing a potluck in Washington D.C. for a decade, and it's every single Sunday. Her whole neighborhood, and these kids like come home from college on Sundays to go to potluck, and so it's like it's definitely worth, like, you're on the right track to do it. Um, one other thing is, between you and the mayor, you're going to start to get a little bit of people being like, we should do this and we should do that. And you have this sliver of time, right? Like, how much time could you possibly do to do this? One party that's super meaningful that I feel like I am pioneering. It's like the core of my strategy is the annual planning party. So
Mm.
you invite everybody to come to a party where you plan out the year. And what everybody does is they're like, hey, we should do this. And you have everybody suggest all their ideas, not knowing that you're about to hit them with the Uno reverse card, which is where you go, that's a great idea. Pull out your calendar. What day are you hosting that event? And then everyone gets their calendar. And then what you end up with is like, we're now at the point where we have 11 annual events that go on. I do a weekly Friday happy hour in the summer.
Nice.
And so it's like crazy, but it's all because of the planning party, but it just formalizes it, because otherwise it's just like anything else where you're like, we should do that forever and ever and ever until we die, but like never actually do it. So
Totally.
unsolicited cut in there of thoughts
Love
of things.
it. No, I think that there's a level of accountability that you have to put on yourself as the host, which is the hardest thing. Like, so, and I think that it's that demonstration of responsibility to that shared community event that leads other people to do it. Like,
Totally.
the mayor is so great because he'll say like, hey, do you want to come over for a little New Year's Eve drinky poo? We're having some people over. And then you show up and he's like created a huge spread on the table, and there's like, a live band playing in the corner of his living room, and you're like, oh Jesus, like, damn, this guy is like so serious about this. Like, I gotta sit down and think about my life. um and I think this, and the reason why I think this is also important is because the church used to do this. There was a formal structure for this, and it was called God. It was all about worship, and that brought people together in a weekly way. It gave us potlucks. It gave us Friday happy hours. All of the things that we are talking about right now were centered around Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, and his various adaptations or whatever.
Yeah.
And we're scared of that now because it's directly linked to so many problematic things. But I've said for a long time, and I wonder how this will play out, but I think that millennials are the generation that are going to go back to church. I think that we've seen church rates decreasing over the years, and just because of you and I doing this thing and seeing so many other people being open and receptive to this thing, people are going to have to find it the way that they can find it, and they're not always going to feel like they have the confidence to go out and meet their neighbors.
Totally.
But in a church environment, that's already baked in. It's already built in. The systems are already there. You don't have to be the person to put up the sign, to host the event, to organize the block party. You just show up every Sunday, pay your tithe, and get the baked in benefits of being a part of a community, and amen, he is holy, and I honestly think that there's going to be a big sort of not religious return to church. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are like, yeah, absolutely love God, he is freaking sick, but also, how are you doing, Wendy? What's been going on? Like, it's not, you're there for the reasons that you want to be there, not because of some sort of guilt that you feel about your worth or where you're going to go after you're dead.
My guess is that the dirty little secret of church is that it probably was always that way. That most people were just like, this is just where you go, And I found out my neighbor works. She's a pastor at a church, and she's like, Graham, you are doing my job. She's like, I literally get paid by the church to do exactly what you're doing. She brought over her flyers, and it's like the annual list of events that she hosts through the church. And it's literally like verbatim some of the stuff that I organize. And so she's like,
Amazing.
you're just doing my job unpaid right now. And so if you are ever at a loss for ideas, just like go to your local church's website and look at their community page and be like, oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I should take that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. It's funny you say that. Because I do think that's very true. Man, this has been so great.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I just like it, because now I'm thinking about it. I'm like, man, isn't that kind of just every cult, every sort of odd group? You could talk about it like every terrorist organization, every sort of weird group of humans is just people being like, I'm kind of lonely.
Yeah.
And nobody, and I just need somebody to do stuff with.
Yeah, you just got to channel it for good,
Yeah, the fucking military, Like, isn't
Yeah.
that what the military is basically? Is like, I don't have any idea of what to do with my life, but you know what? These guys will give me a gun and send me overseas or whatever, you know?
Well, so this, have you read this book before?
No.
It's so good. So it's called Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging. I talked about it in a video I just made, and I realized I don't have a copy anymore, so I just bought it and it just show up today. But there's a whole section of this book about how people that leave the military are desperate for the military again, not because of anything other than the fact that when they were in their unit, that was the most connected they ever felt to other people. And
Right.
it also
Wow.
was like in Sarajevo during the siege of that city was like just an objectively horrible time. And 10 years afterwards, almost everybody that went through it wished they were back in it again because they all had some like a shared thing they were doing
Trauma.
together and they felt community because of
Yeah.
it. So it's just we're
Honestly,
so
COVID was
hardwired.
kind of like that.
Yeah, totally.
Like COVID, like I some of the best times that I've had in our little family bubble was during COVID when we were forced to all be together more often because you couldn't be with anybody else, and so you made time for each other in ways you never would before, and you know then we grew out of that, and now we're like, oh man, maybe COVID wasn't so bad.
Yeah, maybe well maybe we can harness, through this, maybe these stories will encourage people to take that feeling, harness it for good, not drive people to drink any Kool-Aid or lay siege on
Exactly.
anyone. But instead
Yes.
just throw block parties. One
Just throw a
one
block party.
just throw a block party. It's not that hard. Some cities will even pay for it, which I think a lot more people should do. Um, but I wanted one thing. Your mayor, you got to get him like a gift. Like
Yeah.
I don't know what one gets a mayor, but that might be a fun thing to do. You would be surprised at how quickly he goes to tears if you get it for him. So just my little suggestion there. I think that's a fun thing you could do.
What do you get for a man who has everything?
Yeah, a sash, like a like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
beauty
Oh,
pageant
yeah,
sash
yeah. That
that's like
says
official
mayor.
mayor. Yeah.
Oh, dude, he would die. That would be hilarious.
Okay,
Yeah,
I have
or
one
like
last question.
lend
Go ahead.
like our name of our street on it. You know, like
Yep.
the beauty pageants.
Yeah. Yeah. He'll wear it all the time. It'll get stained.
Yeah.
It'll be covered in beer stains and he'll wear it. It'll be great.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, I
Oh
didn't ask
man.
you about your Costco membership, but I mean, speaking of rituals and cults, um,
Yeah.
I
Brandon.
know consumerism isn't your favorite thing in the world, but it's the best, right? Like it's the
Hard to
best.
deny.
It's hard to deny. Okay, good. I just wanted to get that
Yeah.
on record. That's all. That's all I needed.
I'm a part of the club. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
executive member.
Whoa.
Just out here. You know, I could write it off. It was a business expense, so I just went all in. I was like, whatever, let's just go for it.
That's so great. Awesome. Levi, this has been super fun. And
Yeah, it was great.
I'm conscious of your sliver of time that you have. So
Well, thank
thank
you.
you so much.